Hello, welcome to Books in the Biz, a podcast that looks at both the financial and operational sides of success. Please welcome our hosts, Dan Paulson and Richard Veltre. Dan is the CEO of Envision Development International, and he works with leaders to increase sales and profits through great cultures with solid operations. Rich is CEO of the Veltre Group and a financial strategist working with companies to manage their money more effectively. Now on to the podcast.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Books and the Biz. Rich, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dan. How are you?
Great. I'm doing wonderfully. It is a lovely, cold Thursday afternoon in Wisconsin. Are you getting the wet weather that we just had?
I actually had my first snowfall on yesterday, and it was funny because I woke up at like 6:30 and it was snow covered and got myself ready for my first meeting. And at 7 o'clock, I looked out the window and I go, I know I saw it. It was gone by 7 o'clock, but it was there.
Yeah, we had the same thing a week ago. I feel your pain because this is not the time of year that I overly appreciate having nice cars I would like to drive in warm summer months. But either way, we have to deal with winter coming. And in a way, that is kind of what our conversation is about today. Is winter coming? So, for example, has the bubble burst? And you and I were talking earlier this week, and what's interesting is, last week we were talking about AI, and sure enough, we now got some more wonderful stories about AI, and it seems like things aren't as smooth as they were maybe a couple weeks ago with it. What are you hearing out there in the marketplace?
I'm hearing a lot of things, but I mean, some of them are the same things that I've been hearing all along. It's just like this low buzz that just gets a little louder and gets a little louder.
Mm-hmm.
And the question becomes, is the speed and the investment value, et cetera, around AI, is it sustainable? I think we had a recent correction in the markets. We have CEOs of AI companies coming out and saying, here's all the things that we're up against, and then talking about the bubble, which no one likes the word bubble, because that just, bubbles pop. And when
Yes.
it's like pop means small explosion. So
Or big explosion, depending upon how big the bubble is.
Nobody wants to hear that. That's what people are thinking about. Hopefully, you would like to hear somebody like the CEO of Google that's sitting there and saying, everything's full steam ahead and it's fabulous. And here he is talking about a bubble, and he can't hit his energy promotions that they have said, we're going to hit this and we're going to have a zero footprint, but now we have to delay that because AI takes so much energy. Then somebody the other day was telling me how much water that the AI plants actually use to cool the facilities, and they're using drinking water to do that. Like, how long does this go before somebody says, we're going too fast?
Yep. And especially, here in Wisconsin, of course, Midwest, you've got the Great Lakes close by. So there have been, from my recollection, no less than 4 different data centers proposed in areas around Madison or close to Lake Michigan that they're trying to get passed through. And of course, they're selling you on all the benefits of this, from tax ramifications and everything else by implementing these data centers. But I'm finding that there are far more people going, not in my backyard, you're doing this, and really pushing back against it. As far as I know, of the 4, at least 2 have been shot down completely. 2 other ones are kind of in the works in the early kind of, discussion phase, town hall meeting phase, if you will, trying to relieve anxiety for owners that this is a good thing. And then they tell you how much energy usage there's going to be, and it's going to be the entire energy usage for the city for 1 year is going to be this data center. And you're like, well, where's the infrastructure to support all that? And how long is it going to take to build that up? Because I think that's probably the biggest concern. And oh, guys, by the way, solar and wind ain't going to power that stuff. Just so you know, there's just not enough power from wind and solar energy that's going to take that up. So it's getting real interesting. And yeah, I'm curious. So you mentioned the correction. The research I did, I think it's about 8.7% drop in tech-based companies on the marketplace, or on the stock market. And they said, what is 10% is a downturn, is a correction. So pretty significant.
I may have used a word that's a little too high as far as the effect, but 8.7% is, that's a sector that, it's pretty big. You're not, 10% on the whole market is a correction, but 8.7 in one sector, like, somebody got nervous about something and made a pretty big switch, and the rest followed. Because there are people that are in there just saying, look, let's just follow. If the tech thing goes down, then we go down. When they go down, it keeps a kind of, until everybody says, oh, okay, I'm comfortable now.
Right.
It's going.
Yeah, we are in the information industry. So a lot is going to depend on energy. A lot is going to depend on technology. Now, from the hardware side of things, I think NVIDIA posted record earnings, or well ahead of expectations on there. So, so there is some good news, I guess, sprinkled in with this. But I just look at this, and granted, I was much younger when the first tech bubble popped with, the internet, the .com craze. I think you and I were probably either just graduating from college or kind of in that phase. So we knew it from a very high level because we weren't fully in the business world yet. But it still affected everybody and everything, because when the market dropped, of course, there was less investment, there was less spending, and there was less hiring across the board, even in companies that weren't in that tech sector or the .com phase at that time. I do remember all that.
Yeah.
And my curious thoughts are, well, as we're looking at this and looking at how the market's grown since then, because we're talking about kind of 92 to 93, 94 is when the first .com bubble kind of went pop.
Yeah, somewhere around there, because that's when Google was coming.
Yes.
Up. Everybody was talking about Google, and Google had revenues of 0.
Yes.
And they were worth this much, and everybody said, that's a bubble.
That is a bubble.
Now the bubble's kind of disguised, because they are generating revenue or whatever. They are.
Sure.
They are building. There are actual assets being built, but the valuations are so high because everybody pumped. I think it was in the trillions. They're pumping trillions of dollars of investment money into AI, and the question becomes, when you start hearing people talking about how they're putting money in AI, they're developing AI, you get to the point where you start to question, what is AI? Like, where is all this money going, and what's the product? Like, what's the end result?
Well, I can tell you some of that, because if I look across even my social media feeds, I am amazed at how much in the last couple months ads are popping up related to AI, different AI products. Everything from, creating an avatar of yourself, cloning your likeness and your voice, everything from creating avatars of fictitious people that you can then use on other social media accounts. I won't get too much into the weeds, but do the math, where you can then start making money off of this fictitious person who might be dressed provocatively or not dressed at all, that isn't a real human being, and whatnot. Seeing a ton of that popping up. From the practical business purposes, I'm seeing everything from, well, we were talking about last week with, companies like QuickBooks implementing it, and how they're talking about as AI driven, but is it really doing any benefit to you? How many of these companies are implementing some form of AI, but it really isn't producing a positive benefit for the end user? And that's I think similar to the dot-com bubble. Everyone had to have a website back then. Now it seems like everyone has to implement some form of AI, and whether that AI actually does anything for you or not, they're still putting it in because now that's the new buzzword.
Yeah. Well, the other piece that I question, and I can't, because I was so new when the first kind of tech bubble was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't follow it as best as I
Yeah.
probably could now. But I'm looking now and I'm saying, okay, when they say they're investing in AI, how many of them are investing in the actual coding of AI or the programming of AI? How many of them are investing in these data centers that
Right.
require the results that we talked about, the power infrastructure, which remind me to come back to, electric cars. Um, uh, but you're coming up with, I'm investing in these data centers, and I read an article quickly yesterday that said something like 4 data centers in California are empty.
Mm.
Like they've been built and they're ready to go, but there's nobody in it. Like it's so is that where the bubble is going to come from? Because people are investing with sort of on spec, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because people go out and they build this center and then nobody shows up and all of a sudden they go, oh, well, that's not going to work. And then they go bankrupt and all these investors are.
Well, here's the other issue with that. You brought up 4 data centers that are empty. Is just as much of a concern for the ones that are full, because what I'm hearing as we talk through this is you build a data center, and by the time the data center is up and running, the equipment in there is already obsolete. So here's the other thing that we haven't had to really deal with that much is the change is happening so rapidly, and the tech needs for this type of product is so huge that they're spending millions upon billions on something that the moment it launches is it's not as effective anymore, and you're
Yeah.
going to have to reinvest in all that technology all over again. So how do you profit from this? And eventually, like you were talking about, if this is growing so rapidly, when are we hitting the brakes going, okay, this is nuts? There might be some advantages to it, but the costs far outweigh the benefits or the profitability to it.
Yeah. I mean, where does it come back on number one, the investors, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the people that are working it, you know, probably feel like, hey, this is great. But what happens when somebody does put the brakes on?
Right.
How many of those people wind up sitting in a room trying to collect unemployment or or something else? Because I mean, you know, I think I mentioned before the electric cars, and everybody was already talking about the electric cars and saying the growth of the electric car was not sustainable with the current infrastructure. The
Mm-hmm.
electrical, especially the electrical infrastructure,
Yep.
was not sustainable if everybody in the United States was going to go towards an electric car. There was no way, and there's no pace, and there's no government program. There's nothing else out there to deal with the fact that now everybody's on the infrastructure. And like you said, solar and wind, you know, you're taking coal, like you're going to have to leave coal in, or you're going to have to use nuclear, which
Mm-hmm.
everybody's going to look at me with a taboo sign at that point when I say that, you know, but getting these things back up and running, you've got enough people, like you said, not in my backyard. You got enough people that are going to show up and say, we don't want that. And now what do you do?
Right.
Now you're stalled on the fact that you got a great idea. You've got a great idea to launch, and the speed you want to launch at, there's no way you can get there. You have to do an entire infrastructure bill
Yeah,
to.
well, and I think that's what's coming with a lot of these data centers is, there's a reason why Microsoft is relaunching 3 Mile Island nuclear reactors, because that's what type of power you need just to run these things, and that's where, to me, we're going to see the biggest problem is that you're not just building a data center, you have to build a power center to power the data center. Otherwise, you have a bunch of people that are going to be sitting in the dark and not even be able to use the service that's being provided there. I think we're just moving too rapidly, and it is going to lead to pop goes the bubble, and it's not just going to affect technology. That's going to be a big part of it. It's going to affect Those companies that want to sell, especially sell to private equity, because you got to wonder how much of that money is being turned or reinvested to try and maximize, their rate of return on that. Obviously, if you're building a data center, there's construction companies that have to go in there and do that. Well, what happens when you're halfway through building it and you've spent millions or maybe even billions of dollars, and now all of a sudden they've gone bankrupt and now you can't get paid for the work you've done? It's not. It could not be. It could end up being a situation where it's not going to be a fun ride. Right. And I think that's where even small to medium-sized businesses really kind of have to be careful, because, bubbles happen due to emotion, greed, if you will, because people run towards where the next newest, greatest idea is and try to get in early to take advantage of it. And the rest of us who wait to see what's going to happen out of it, could suffer the effects if the wrong things happen. So, from a business standpoint, in my opinion right now, whether you are a small or medium-sized company, you better be finding ways to optimize what you're doing and start figuring out ways to improve now versus later, and waiting to see if the bubble's going to pop. Because, we know where the headwinds are at this point. I don't think they're secret anymore. Now the question is, can that stuff get pushed through? And on top of it, can the infrastructure be built simultaneously to support that? Because that is more regulations, that's more restrictions. That's at both the state and federal levels at that point. And what I hear politically, at least at the federal level, is a lot of this energy usage is going to get promoted or approved in a rather quick window. So supposedly within a matter of days or a matter of weeks, all this stuff's got to be approved, where before it was years, if not decades, to push stuff through. So we're also going to see what's going to happen there. Is that going to be allowed, or is it going to be decided by the courts? Because we already know that there's people who don't want these things in their backyard. Then, okay, where are they going to go? Are we going to build them in the middle of the ocean?
Yeah.
Which may not be a bad idea for all the water you need.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's a little scary, to add on to the fact that you mentioned the political, it's scary that politicians are already putting themselves on a side of whether or not there'll be a bailout if the AI bubble pops. There's already a focus on the fact that if this pops, they're not going to bail the companies out. So you look back at bubbles popping, technology bubble. There was, I don't remember what came out with that, but I'm sure there was things to help out these companies and keep.
Well, the housing bubble led to many banks getting bailed out, and
real estate,
and also automotive industry, because once the bubble popped there, it took out everything.
Yep.
And it was either everyone's going to be unemployed or the government has to pump money into it. And that's really where we saw the big deficit increases just jump from that. So considering where we're at now, how much is going to change?
I remember the automotive bubble that they wanted to bail out. And then all four of the big companies, they all flew in separate private jets down to the meeting in D.C. to get their bailout.
Talk about tone deaf.
and some of these politicians don't forget that.
Right.
They remember this is what it looks like when you go for a bailout, and their reputation is everything. So, they're basically putting these people on notice. Hey, go figure it out. This is a private deal.
Yep.
And now when you say that they're approving the energy sector, or they're approving everything with the energy sector, I'm like, how do you say that that's a private deal, but what you're putting together for them is not a private deal?
Right.
Like, now this requires the energy sector. I mean, it's sloppy. It's always sloppy.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully at the end of the day, they can Band-Aid it all together, but yet another industry built on Band-Aids.
Yep. Which then leads to more deficits and also leads to greater problems, more inflation. So, I think that leads to where we should probably wrap this up with is, we're at the end of the year now. We're going to be rolling into December pretty soon. We're into Thanksgiving next week, for example, as of this recording. I am sure there are business owners out there trying to figure out what's what are they going to do next year? And maybe they do strategic planning. I know most small to medium-sized companies, it's a hit or miss on whether they do it. And it's even a bigger hit or miss on whether it's actually going to be effective what they do. I think companies need to start looking at next year and looking at the challenges that they're rolling into and the potential headwinds that are coming. And they better start preparing for it now. And if preparing for it means, sitting down, figuring out how they're going to grow through this. Because I don't think just battening down the hatches and just not spending any money is necessarily a solution. It's going to be, where do you spend your money and how do you spend your money wisely, and where do you make cutbacks that are already wasted money that maybe you don't realize. And to me, that's more powerful than just locking up the vault and saying, well, we're not going to spend anything. We're not going to hire anybody right now, because you and I know that the companies that make wise investments, even during downturns, are more than likely going to succeed far better than the companies that just close the doors, shut the books, and hide under the desk, hoping that everything's going to be okay in a couple months. Because, typical downturns are what? 18 to 24 months is usually the average. So better to be prepared and be prepared for growth and set yourself up that way. So now here's, I guess, where we can get into some of our shameless plugs. We've got the 20 questions review, and we've got the succession report we do, because we also know there are many companies that are trying to say, well, how am I going to sell this thing? Well, here's all the more reason why you need to be better prepared for that. So whether you use us or not, we have a couple tools that we can help you kind of figure out the path forward, regardless of what the outside environment's going to do to us.
Yep. Definitely think about calling us with the 20 questions analysis or our succession report. Just from a day-to-day standpoint, if you don't know where you stand, start there. Okay?
Yes.
Because even if we come in with our 20 questions or our succession report, we're going to ask you questions. And if you don't know where you stand, there's nothing in there. You can't answer it. So,
right.
Know where you stand, and then set yourself up to be accountable for, how did I do? How do I want to do next year? Can I match? Those types of things are the things that you really need to know. And if you don't know now on the end of November, if you don't know and you need to figure it out, I'm telling you, that's probably your first step. Make sure you figure it out. Where are you? How do you stand? And as you go into next year, then set yourself an accountable goal. Really, I'm on that accountable word.
Good for you.
So, make yourself accountable to, here's what I plan to do. And by next year, you're saying, here's what I said, here's what I did, how did I do?
Yeah.
So start there, but definitely, if you're in a position where you're starting to think about succession, you're starting to think about selling, you're starting to think about where do you want to be, give us a call. Let's talk about 20 questions. Let's talk about succession.
Or even scaling. If it's not succession, there's definitely the scaling part of it. And again, the biggest advantages to scale are when there's economic downturns, because everyone else stops spending money and everyone else stops growing. So if you can figure out how to work through that effectively and efficiently, that's going to put you ahead. Rich, if they do need to get a hold of us for our 20 questions or our succession review, what's the best way to do that?
Best way is by email, rveltri. Nope, I did it wrong.
Yeah,
you did it wrong. It's Rich at xcxo.net.
And it's just Dan at xcxo.net. And Rich, this has been a good discussion as always, and hopefully we will hear from some people. Also, feel free to give us feedback. If you agree with us in the comments, put that in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe, because we will, of course, talk about other things related to this. But Rich, as always, good talk. And Bob, take it away.
Want to boost your sales and profits, but need the talent to help you grow? XCXO is a one-of-a-kind platform to find skilled fractional executives to help develop your team into a high-performance powerhouse. Fractional leadership is a great choice when you consider the average executive-level candidate can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaries, benefits, and incentives. XCXO finds you the executive and utilizes their talents to build your team's experience, all for a fraction of the cost of a full-time C-suite leader. Contact XCXO today to fill the gaps in your leadership team. Visit xcxo.net to learn more.